Thanks, Richard. Good morning. Before we begin today, before we do anything else, we take a moment this morning to pause in sadness, grief, and in memory of Jane Parrish, who died this last week. Jane was a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. She was a longtime member of the fellowship, joining more than 50 years ago, not too long after it was founded. While she was here, she founded several programs which still exist today. So we light a candle this morning in honor of the light that she brought into this world. May her light join with ours. May it reach out to those yet to come and shine forevermore as love does. The following piece of music is a traditional canon sung in Latin, Dona Nobis Pacem, which means grant us peace. We offer this today that Jane might find peace and that those who knew her and loved her might find peace and comfort in their friends and loved ones. Good morning and welcome to Minnesota Valley UU Fellowship. We welcome you here whether you are feeling broken today or whether you are feeling whole. We welcome you here whether this is a good day for you or a bad day. In this community, we hope that you find care, nourishment, and support for your mind and your spirit. We invite you into this gathering to give love, share love, and receive love. If you or someone you know could use extra care from me or one of our new pastoral care associates, please let us know. We are all in this together, and we are all here to help each other get through these and all challenging times. A couple of quick announcements before we get started. The newsletter is out, so please make sure that you check that for updates and happenings that are going on this month. One new thing that's not and Wilson DeTran is going to start offering chair yoga. That's yoga that's done in a chair. It's great stretches for anybody. It can be used for beginners, folks who maybe have physical issues can use it, but also it's great for anybody at any level. That's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think at 9 to 9:45, and that'll be on this same Zoom room that you're on right now, and I'll make sure that we send out an email with links for that later today or tomorrow. Other changes in the schedule, there are no more Zoom gatherings aside from yoga and the Sunday services, with the exception of committee meetings and groups that might be meeting on their own, and religious education. Some of those groups that we were doing during the week, happy hour, and some of the other support groups that we had initially started, weren't getting as much attendance as we like to see, but we did notice that we were getting a lot more interest on things that we would post on Facebook. So going forward, Steph and I will be sending out messages, video recorded messages on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those will be emailed to you. And they'll also be posted on Facebook and probably on YouTube as well. So look for those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, I know that we're not meeting in person, but the fellowship still needs all of your help to keep us running. Later today, we're going to be talking about founding members, and you'll hear, some of the great things that people have done over the years. But we still need your help to keep the fellowship going. So I encourage you to get involved in any ways that you can. I know some people have been doing some gardening, and we've got some new pastoral care associates who are helping me check in on everybody, and that's fantastic. But here's some other things that I really, really need your help on. I really need help from parents for RE Sunday, which is coming up this month. So we're planning to make a video RE Sunday, but that only works if I have videos from all the families. So if you can take a short video on your phone, I think there are details for that in the newsletter, and you probably got an email as well. Check that out for what information you need. And any videos of your kids doing anything would be great. And I'm going to string it all together and make us a great RE Sunday video to watch. Music Sunday, we're also doing that this month because that got canceled in March. So send your videos of you singing, of you playing your instrument, of you dancing to your favorite song, whatever it is, so long as there's music involved. We would love to have it. You can send that to Nicole or I so that we can put together that for Music Sunday. And finally, Flower Communion will be at the end of the month. Please maybe take pictures of flowers that are coming up in your garden so that I can make a nice collage of those kinds of things. That would be great. One more thing is that the annual meeting, we are going to have the annual meeting, and it is going to be online. However, in order to do that, I think we need to have a special meeting first so that we can pass something that says that we can have it online, because we don't have anything in our bylaws that says that we can have it not in person. So please look for emails that are coming up to be sent about a special meeting where we'll need members to come together for a quick vote so that we can have the annual meeting, which will be online. So in other words, check your email. Thanks so much. This is our 7th week of doing online services. We've been on stay-at-home orders since March 20th. That makes this day 49. Many things have changed, and some things have stayed the same. I thought maybe this morning we could share some of those things in the chat. So if you're not on the phone, if you're on an iPad or a phone or a smartphone or a computer, there's a little chat thing in the bottom, in the middle. And if you click on that, it'll open the chat. Make sure it's clicked on everyone so that we can all see it. And I'm wondering what for you has stayed the same since you've been home? For instance, I still write the Sunday service at home, which is what I did before. And Emily and I still spend our Saturday mornings eating a hearty breakfast while we watch shows on PBS, cooking shows. That's our favorite thing to do on Saturdays. So what's still the same for you? Bacon and Sunday comics, that sounds great. Lark's still cooking all of her meals at home. Right, so we're holding over some routines from before are staying the same. Choir on Wednesdays, exactly. We're still having that. We're still having Sunday services. So there are a lot of things that we're doing that have stayed the same as before, as you can see. So now let's think about what things have changed, what things are different than before. Just go ahead and type your answers there. So for me, one thing that's different is I now have bubbling goo, also known as sourdough starter, in a jar on my counter. And there are a lot more dishes to do at home since we're cooking and eating so much more here. We cooked and ate a lot at home before, but it seems like just when we get done washing dishes, there are more dishes. What's changed for you? Waking up later since your commute is now 10 feet. I do like that change. More relaxed life. We're biking and kayaking. Yeah, there's good things and bad things I think that we're finding in these changes. Or I shouldn't even say good things and bad things. That's judgmental language, but there are things that are relaxing and things that are challenging. We'll put it that way. It's good to think about those things every day as we're in this new time, to think about the things that have stayed the same, the things that we've made adjustments to so that they can stay the same. Yeah, everybody's Zoom literate. We've all learned something. Long walks in the middle of the day, which is really nice this time of year. Really nice. One thing that has not changed is our love of community and our love of music in this community, but the method of delivery has certainly changed. So I'm grateful for these folks working so hard to bring us this beloved gift of music. And I ask that you please welcome to your screen John Holm on violin, Tom Ellinger on guitar, and on vocals today we've got Nicole Collins, Kaizen Hummer, and Lark Lewis.
shape the sky. I smell the flowers blooming, opening for spring. I'd like to be those flowers, open to everything. Sun. I'd like to be those seasons they have been undone. I taste the living earth, the seeds that grow within. I'd like to be that earth, the home where life begins. I see the moon horizon reaching into night. I'd like to be that moon, a knowing, glowing light. I know the silence as the world begins to wake. I'd like to be that silence as the morning breaks. I see the rivers running and water running by. I like to see what I feel the wind blowing, slowly changing time. I'd like to be the wind that swirl and shake the sky. Shake the sky, smell the flowers blooming, opening for spring. For spring, I'd like to be those flowers, open to every, open to everything. Open to everything. Open to everything.
Good.
I don't know who's clapping, but that's adorable. All right. Will you all please join me in the words for our chalice lighting this morning? Richard, can you post those words over in the chat for everybody to join in? Just waiting. Richard, do you have those words? Here, I'll get them. And actually, before we join in these words, I'll remind you all there's a reference to World War II in this chalice lighting this morning that was written by Alice Anacheka Naserman. That's because, for those of you who might know, and some of you might not know, the symbol of a chalice actually comes from World War II, when the Unitarian Service Association was trying to get papers and supplies in and out of Nazi Germany and get people out of Nazi Germany. They came up with this symbol of somebody came up with the symbol of a chalice to make things look more official, because that helped. And that's why we have a chalice symbol. It's as simple as that. Let's see, did we get those words up? I'm going back and forth between my screens here. And am I? Well, they're there. So please join me in these words. We light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that the flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope during World War II, a secret symbol that offered help. In the midst of it all, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together in community. Each week, we set aside a few minutes to lift up the joys and sorrows and concerns of the congregation. I invite you to paste or to type anything that is a joy or concern for you in the chat. If you're on the phone, you can just share with your voice if you'd like. I do want to start with 2 candles of concern. One is for Bob Johnston, who has been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and the other for Barb Bolog, who has also been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Actually, 3 candles, I'm sorry. The third is for our beloved founder, Betty Gutman, who is dealing with having COVID-19 right now. So we light a candle for her as well. And let's see what else we have in the chat today. For a friend of Jean Paul's, from a friend of hers at work, her dad died of COVID-19 in New Hope. A joy from the Grady's that they went to a fun family hike yesterday at Richard Anderson Park in Eden Prairie. A candle for Kathleen's mom's cousin who died of COVID-19 last week. A joy for having a job, but a sorrow that pay has been cut. I'll remind you too, if you're posting these in the chat, to make sure that you have the little blue thing that says that you're sending it to everyone. Gratitude for the frogs who continue to sing to all those who walk by them in the park. Myra's joyful to have her niece with her for the first time in 6 weeks. Joy for Awesome Possum, who started out as a foster dog. Oh, it's a foster fail. But they decided to adopt. Lark Lewis, foster failure. Yes, very sad that we've lost Jane Parrish, who this week, and I'm very, very concerned about Betty. A candle of joy for some of the things that do stay the same. Blooming and creeping phlox, tulips, and beautiful azalea bushes. I did post, by the way, if you go to our Facebook page, those of you that are on Facebook, I took some pics of things that were blooming at the fellowship yesterday, including the magnolia tree is blooming. And there are some tulips and other small flowers coming up in the garden. And also there's a great video of my dog running up the stairs. So if you need to see a happy dog running at the fellowship. And grateful for new ducklings and goslings that are showing up in the spring. Certainly there's a lot of life budding and sprouting and hatching around us, and we're grateful for all of that. If there's not anything else, yes, Ruth, we definitely remember, or Ruth, we're definitely remembering Betty today, and Jane. And I'll talk a little bit more about them in my message today. And gratitude for Becky, who's been helping in the garden, who's been doing the garden, and also Polly and I think it's Julie Harkness, I think, are helping as well in the garden right now. So they've both been there working as well. Those of you who haven't been in fellowship, I know you haven't been there. Paul, our custodian, is painting as we're using him to add some paint. And so the office has been painting, and some of the common areas around the office are being painted a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Calm of a color, not quite as buzzy and white, bright white. So when we do get back there, it's looking rather lovely. All right, so we lit that final candle, and I ask you all to join in our sung response. The words are in the chat. And Clark will lead us in that, I think.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is the answer.
Laura Luna Mancuso is an ordained interfaith minister who serves the Santa Barbara community. She serves as the spiritual life director, which is a chaplain, at Vista del Monte Retirement Community. By the way, this is a great reminder for those of you who have friends or relatives staying in retirement communities or long-term care facilities that have a chaplain, to send them a note of love and thanks, because they are doing some very hard work right now in ministering to folks when their families and their own ministers aren't able to be there for them. So we thank Laura for her work, and thank her for this lovely meditation that she's sharing with us today, which reminds us all to care for ourselves. I invite you all to take a couple of deep breaths and relax. Just kind of let go of tension in your body, wherever you may be holding it. Maybe take another deep breath and just find yourself feeling a little bit easier. And open your heart to receive these words. My commitments to myself. I take care of myself first because I am deserving of exquisite care. I take care of myself to maintain the capacity to help others. I move and stretch my body every day. I spend time in nature, attuning my senses to the earth's wisdom. I ration my daily exposure to the news. I identify and access credible sources of information. I protect myself from becoming overwhelmed by information about the pandemic. I pace myself. I sit with the reality of uncertainty and impermanence and allow it to temper my desire for control. I listen without judgments to others' reactions, which may be different than mine. I forgive myself and others when stress brings out our shadow selves. I feel fear fully when I am fearful. I experience sadness fully when I am sad. I allow anger fully when I am angry. I relish joy fully when I am joyful. I seek out healthy pleasures and indulge them without guilt. I remind myself that feelings are transient states that move through me. They do not last, and they do not define me, nor do my thoughts. I balance my drive for self-improvement with compassionate acceptance of myself as I am right now. I initiate contact with loved ones to let them know I hold them in my heart. I seek out with increased sensitivity those who are most vulnerable. If possible, I share my resources with those who need help to survive. When possible, I move away from people, situations, and experiences that do not serve my highest good. I strengthen my connection to my sources of spiritual strength so that I can continue to be replenished. I acknowledge the names of death as a key motivator for living a full life. I pray for the suffering of all beings to cease. I grieve my losses and celebrate my successes. I remain open to new ways of being, surprising sources of joy, and unanticipated discoveries every day. Thank you, Laura, for those words and that great meditation. Certainly, there's a lot there for us to remember to hold every day as we go through these uncertain times. And with that in mind, I'm going to invite Polly Sonifer to share her reflections on uncertainty.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Polly Sonifer. About 20 years ago, I was active in a self-help group that was called More to Life. And we were taught to do processes that helped us clear away our mental chatter. Part of each process was called verification. We were told to write down all the mental chatter and then rate each statement as true, false, or don't know. By definition, everything that was in the future was always classified as don't know, because none of us can truly know the future. Now, I'm a person who craves certainty. I love structure in my life. I panic if there's nothing on my Google Calendar. Before COVID-19, I was in a bunch of classes, volunteering at 2 places, and hanging out with lots of friends. All of that screeched to a halt when media uttered the word pandemic. My calendar was empty. My life had been canceled until further notice. So here's some of the mental chatter that came up for me when our social isolation first began. I'll spend the rest of my retirement at home alone. I'll die of loneliness or COVID. Nobody will even be allowed to sit at my bedside as I die of COVID or loneliness or both. Nobody will be allowed at my funeral. I cannot bear this. So join me for a moment to verify each of those statements. I'll spend the rest of my life alone. Don't know. I'll die of loneliness. Don't know. Nobody will be allowed to sit at my bedside. Don't know. Nobody will be at my funeral. Don't know. I cannot bear this. I don't know that either. All of those statements are based on my future projections. Each of my fears is based on that uncertainty about my uncertain future. Even if my mental chatter is saying exactly the opposite, what if my mental chatter was saying, COVID will pass and I'll live to be 100 years old and die surrounded by loving friends? well, that's still a projection onto my future. That statement is just as much of a don't know as the pessimistic statements based on fear and worry. So what did the More to Life program teach me to do with the don't knows in my life? The answer, simply be with them. Accept that my future, as well as everybody else's future, is unknown. Consider these. Will the sun come up tomorrow? Probably. Will I be there to see the sun come up? Likely. Will I be healthy or happy when the sun comes up? Perhaps. Will I live to see another 50 years of sunrises? Probably not. And yet, in the long run, does it matter? It does matter to me that my personality craves predictability and structure. So I do tend to schedule things in my life. There's nothing wrong about that. It's not a moral failing. It's simply a feature of my life. Am I shattered when all my carefully laid plans are suddenly canceled? Yes, for a while I was. And then I watched myself start to make new plans. New structures emerged. We have wheels on the bus walks in foursomes with friends. We Zoom. I text more than I used to. I sew face masks, and I make Barbie houses for my granddaughter. For all of these new structures, I'm grateful. And my life goes on uncertainly. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Polly. I have posted our donation button over in the chat, and I'll try to get a link to that reading that I just shared, maybe during the closing hymn, when I've got time to copy and paste that for you. And I'll also try and put it on our Facebook page, the link as well. If you're donating this month, we have switched Sunday sharing partners. This month, our Sunday sharing partner is Beacon Interfaith Housing. Beacon does tremendous work on several fronts. They work with legislators on the state level and in local communities to help expand affordable housing options all across the state. I know they've been doing some work recently in the Savage area about getting a shelter built there. And they definitely do work at the Capitol as well. And they're also the parent organization for Families Moving Forward, which is the family shelter program that we helped with last month. Originally, we were going to have those folks staying at our facility, and it ended up that they couldn't because of the virus and stay-at-home orders. They stayed at hotels, and we provided food for them, and thank you for your donations there. And do know that the donations that you shared this month, with half of the Sunday offering going towards Beacon, that part of that is in helping to support the program as well. And I thank you ahead of time for your donations. So I wanted to do a service reflecting on our founders. And so we're going to do that today, and it's I'd hope to have them here with us, and obviously that's not going to work, which doesn't mean that they're not in our thoughts, and that we don't still honor the founding of this fellowship. So on February 20th, 1966, 26 people signed bylaws, and a steering committee was formed to form the Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. And we might like to think that this was some kind of organic gathering of like minds being thrown together by the winds of fate. But who are we kidding? Most of us don't believe in that kind of stuff. The beginnings of this fellowship were far more pragmatic than that. The fellowship was founded in large part because First Universalist Church in Minneapolis just didn't have enough room for all of their congregants. 8 months prior to the establishment of this fellowship, at First U's annual meeting, the idea was brought up that maybe some of the members who lived in the southern suburbs could move on and out to form a new fellowship, easing some of the pressure off the limited space in the building. Some of the RE classes at the time were being held in the kitchen and anywhere else they could find room. They needed some people to leave. With the support of the wonderful Reverend John Cummins, who presided over First Universalist at the time, the new fellowship was formed. They didn't have a building, but they had each other. They didn't have staff, but they had faith in their own actions. They didn't have money, but they held value in their beliefs. They met in people's homes, they met at Fort Snelling, they met at the Masonic Lodge in Richfield, and sometimes even in rented hotel rooms, where rumor has it, children would order hot chocolate from room service and run up a tab. P.S. Our kids still love drinking hot chocolate on Sunday mornings. Among those founding members were Betty Gutman, Al Hyman, Luella, and Red Newstrom, who are still members today. In 1967, Luella became our first UUA representative at the annual gathering of UUs in Denver. The theme that year was responding to a revolutionary age. There was certainly a lot of revolution to respond to in 1967. The civil rights and anti-war movements were in full swing, and the second wave of feminism was getting wind beneath its wings. The fellowship responded to this age of revolution with discussion, learning, and action, and the congregation began to grow. Jane Parrish, who we honored at the beginning of this service, joined in 1967 and quickly became active, establishing a bridge club and a rummage sale, which would become long-running programs at Minnesota Valley. In 1969, there were 70 children enrolled in the religious education program at MVUUF. 70. That's about how many kids we have today. So you can see how demographics might have shifted over the years. In the early days of the fellowship, the average age of members was much lower today, and there were far more families than elders. And these kids, much like ours today, they were smart and active in the world around them. In May of 1970, the Minnesota Valley High School Youth, along with the Social Action Committee, published The Last Call, which served to present realities in racial and social movements and motivate them to become precipitators of action, changers of attitudes in communities. Social action and anti-racism work were there in the beginning. Of course, not everything else was there yet. Barb Bullock, who joined in the early 70s with her husband, Fred, said that they all suffered greatly through many a poorly sung song, as there was no musical accompaniment yet. Her husband, Fred, was the treasurer, and he started a community garden where a parking lot is now. Much to everyone's dismay, Betty Gutman's spaghetti squash was taking over everyone else's space. Of course, though, vegetable vines weren't the only thing that Betty was spreading. In 1972, Betty, who was then serving as Minnesota Valley's president, hand-delivered a copy of the Pentagon Papers published by the UUA's Beacon Press to the Penn Lake Library. There's a photo of it, and you can see the pride and pleasure she took in doing so. In 1975, the fellowship began meeting at its current location. In 1976, Sonia Johnston became the music director. Jane Parrish founded the women's group, and rummage sale earned $196 that year. By the following year, the fellowship had grown to 49 members. Keep in mind, that's twice as many kids as members. In the 80s, Jenny Christensen presented the first landscaping plan. The smoking area was moved outdoors. Sonia debuted her annual big event with the Great Limerick Debate. Minnesota Valley became a member church to Veep, and the first halftime minister, Lori Bushbaum, was called to serve. Now, the 90s brought more growth and some changes in ministers. And the Hyman's donations of new coffee makers solved the great caffeinated versus non-caffeinated debate. Issues of the day being explored and discussed in the 90s included single equality, but it was also a great time of transition. By the end of the decade, at the very end of the decade, the office manager, the DRE, and the minister all resigned at the same time in June 1998. That's a lot. Undeterred by these changes, however, the following year, this ever forward-looking fellowship, after all those resigned, this ever forward-looking fellowship voted overwhelmingly to start a capital campaign and named George Fairman chair of the building committee. By September of that year, building plans were finalized and fundraising began. As the new millennium came, the church services were moved to Creekside Community Center and the fellowship offices were moved to Joan Mickelson's house. Janet Stevens became the new administrator and Mary Samuels was installed as the fellowship's next minister. In 2001, MVUF began a 2-year process to become a welcoming congregation to the LGBTQ community, and Linda Hand and Betsy Longley started a spirituality group. Jan Fitzgerald became the DRE in 2004. The Green Sanctuary Committee was formed in 2005, and peace vigils began that year as well, every Tuesday at 4:30. 2006 brought the fight for marriage equality. 2007 and 2008 saw interim ministers Roger Jones and Don Rollins leading the congregation. And in 2009, the Reverend Dr. David Breeden was installed. The decade closed out with weekly summer services being held in the parking lot as folks gathered in lawn chairs, sitting in a circle. In the last 10 years, the fellowship has worked with the Hannaful Foundation on a plan to buy the property south of the current building. We sent our senior high kids on a pilgrimage to Boston. We've renewed our welcoming congregation status. We've formed a racial justice committee, and we've done 2 rounds of beloved conversations. We received $100,000 in grant money from the Hannaful Foundation and put it to good use, improving our technology, stewardship, and membership efforts. In the last few years, you've called and installed a new minister in yours truly and gratefully. You've hired a second minister part-time who has worked with heartfelt conviction in developing small group and racial justice ministries here while overseeing our children's programming. You've hired 2 lovely and talented people, and Nicole Collins as musical director and Lark Lewis as accompanist after our beloved Sonia retired after 43 years of musical service to this fellowship. In the last few months, during all of this transition, we've added Jeannie Picos as office manager and Maria Bevere as RE coordinator, and both of them are doing a tremendous job in spite of these current working conditions. Because here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and who knows what tomorrow will bring. These are uncertain times. But times have always been uncertain, haven't they? The civil rights movement, the peace movement, the feminist movement, the LGBTQ movement, global warming, the immigration crisis, economic disparity, Black Lives Matter, gun control, all of these movements have faced or still face uncertainty, and yet they endure. They change and evolve as they need to, with each step forward bringing a new perspective. The only thing certain, they say, in life are death and taxes. everything else is uncertain. Unitarian Universalism is not a faith that runs from uncertainty. We embrace it. We pressed onward into uncertainty with a measure of faith and conviction to shape the world we dream of. 54 years ago, our founding members established this fellowship with no certainty of what it would become, how long it would last, and no certainty as to what it would come to mean to so many of us. We are not a faith tradition that holds answers. We are a progressive faith tradition that does not yield to uncertainty, but leans into it and dares to ask the question, what is possible? Betty Gutman asked that question, what is possible? Al Hyman, Luella, and Red Newstrom asked that question, what is possible? Those who came after them asked that question, what is possible? Our fellowship was founded 54 years ago around not certainty, but around the hope for what might be possible. And so here we are today, and things feel especially uncertain for the fellowship, for our livelihoods, for our communities, and for our families. Uncertainty is there. But we will endure. This fellowship was officially founded by only 26 people, and we are grateful for their conviction and their curiosity as they moved into that uncertain future. Their dreams, however, were not their own. Every member and every MVUUF friend who has come after was woven into that foundation, broadening it and reinforcing it. Every new volunteer, every new idea, every new pledge, every new way of doing things, every new program, whether long lasting or a flop, is a sharing of hope and faith, stirred out of the conviction that what we believe matters, that the principles we hold most dear are the keys to building a bright future. Everything we do today shapes the future to come. In fact, it's the only thing that does. We may not be able to escape uncertainty. We can't escape uncertainty. We may not be able to predict the future, but we always have a choice as to what we are taking there. Love, hope, faith, joy, justice, the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. We carry all of these things forward, always. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know what we are taking there. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know that we will get there together. May it be so, and amen. We have another lovely music selection for you today. I'm going to post the lyrics over here in the chat. Thanks to Nicole, who's working so hard on that music. I had a request in a chat. I don't know if one of the Gutman children who are present would be willing to type an update as a message over in the chat as to how Betty is doing. We're all holding her in our hearts. If you're willing to do that, that would be great. All right, will you all please join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice? The words are printed over in the chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I close this morning with these words adapted from John Burns and Rebecca Parker. Hope rises. It rises from the heart of life here and now, beating with joy and sorrow. Hope longs. It longs for good to be affirmed, for justice and love to prevail, for suffering to be alleviated, and for life to flourish in peace. Hope remembers. It remembers the dreams of those who have gone before and reaches for connection with them across the boundary of death. Hope acts. It acts to bless, to protest, and to repair. Hope invites. It invites us into uncertainty to imagine and create the best that might be possible. Stay safe and take exquisite care of yourself. Thank you, Lark. That was wonderful. I want to remind you all about your little reactions buttons on the bottom, kind of down where that chat is. There's one that says reactions, and you can go like this, and it makes little clappies. You're seeing all our claps, Lark. In just a minute, I'm going to break us all into smaller rooms for visiting with one another. If you don't want to do that, now is a good time to head out. We're going to have a great service next week. Carla